Yo, what is going on, my dudes? Welcome to another RuneScape news coverage video. For this video, we're going to be talking about a design document that just got put out pertaining to the completionist cape rework. So without any further ado, let's jump right into the video. Let's go.
Cats is the illest. What you talking about, Willis?
Alright guys, before we get started, I do have to preface that everything in this video is subject to change. None of it is final, and Jagex is asking for all the feedback they can get on it. They want to shape this into the update that we want and like. So don't worry if you have an idea or an opinion differing from anything discussed in this video. Just let Jagex know. So I will have a link to the full design document down in the description below if you want to read it in its entirety, but we're going to cover the gist of what it proposes. First off, with this rework as a whole, there's 4 problems they want to address. The first being the enormous utility and stats on one cape being the completionist cape, making it the only cape worth wearing and people who aren't necessarily completionists forced to get it. Second is the inconsistency with the requirements for the capes. Currently they've been shying away from adding new recs to annoy the players. Third problem is specific requirements, things like Reaper and Castle Wars, forcing people who don't want to do group content out of those kinds of things. And the fourth problem is the lack of objectives to aim for once you're max. The only thing after max is comp cape, there's no intermediary steps. So those are the 4 problems. First thing they want to do is improve the achievements and add new capes. So they want to remove the completionist category and add a lore category. That means all the things comprised in the completionist section will be divvied out into various different sections, for example lore and miscellaneous. And they want to rethink how completionism is defined. The second thing they want to do is add a tier system within each category, either 1, 2, or 3, 1 being the lowest, 3 being the highest, with obviously the hardest of achievements. Then within each achievement category, they'll create meta achievements for each tier. For example, the tier 1 lore will require all quests to be completed. This will replace the quest cape. Tier 2 lore will require all mini quests and post quest achievements plus tier 1. Tier 3 will require all the rest of the lore category and achievements and lore books, as well as everything from tier 2. That means with all 6 of the different categories, and each one having 3 different tiers, that gives them 18 meta achievements. The lore, combat, and skilling categories will have a cape associated with each achievement. So tier 1 lore would unlock tier 1 lore cape, tier 2 skilling will unlock tier 2 skilling cape, so on and so forth. Adding all these new capes will address problem 4, where there was a lack of stepping stone achievements. They also want to write and publish clear guidelines for what achievements belong to which categories, so developers and players will know what to expect from new content. And new content will almost always bring new achievements, which will add to additional requirements to the tier meta achievements, and also address problem 2 with inconsistent comp cape recs. Moving on, we're going to talk about non-stat cape bonuses. So currently comp inherits pretty much all other cape benefits, such as Ava's accumulator, spirit cape, that kind of thing. This ties hugely into problem 1, with comp being the best in slot and there's no other cape that even competes. So the plan is to attach those rewards to the player instead. So when they unlock the item rewards, they gain the permanent benefits immediately to their character, which means anyone can combine their effects without needing a comp cape to be the container for all of them. Now these rewards will mainly fall into 2 categories, either active, such as the max cape teleport, or passive like the Ava's accumulator effect. For active benefits, for example, let's say you have the max cape teleport and the skeletal horror teleport, but you don't have a comp cape, you'll have those right click teleport options on any cape you wear. And for passives, once you unlock, for example, Ava's accumulator via animal magnetism, you'll unlock its passive ability permanently without needing to wear the alerter or any specific cape in that slot, which does mean if they go this route, they will need to change the 99 ranged cape perk, as that currently does that benefit. So this will help with the problem 1 with comp being the best in slot, because you no longer need to wear your comp cape in order to get these benefits. They do go on to say that with that solution, they can't put every single right click option onto the cape, there's simply too many, so they'll need to implement some sort of cape customization interface so you can decide which ones you want conveniently available on your right click and which will require additional clicks. This interface will also nicely display any passive benefits you have so you can remember all effects you have available. Now moving on to the cape stats. So stats are useful in combat, and they felt that it's not really appropriate to expect things like farming or mage training arena to be requirements for those kinds of stats. So the raw stats themselves, the style bonuses, armor, etc., they want to move away from the cape of accomplishments and instead have it a raw benefit to any cape you wear. So long as you have, for example, the tier 1 meta achievements completed, you'll gain a passive plus 11 armor, plus 3 prayer, and plus 5 to each combat styles at all times. This bonus doesn't use up your cape slot and does stack with any capes you currently have worn. So for example, the Takhar Kelket cape gives you 44 armor, 2 prayer, and 31 strength. But if you have completed the tier 1 achievements, it would be 55 armor, 5 prayer, and 36 strength, plus 5 range and plus 5 magic. This also helps with problem 1, as it'll allow them to add new cape drops to monster drop tables, which opens up a whole variety of new rewards to give out. And since you only need to complete a single category of tier 1, you shouldn't feel compelled to play content that you don't want to anymore. Moving on to the new comp cape. So with the new reorganization of this tier system within the achievements, and moving the cape's benefits to the player rather than the cape itself, there's now a space to add a new comp cape. They want to add 3 new comp capes with this update: tier 1 comp, tier 2, and tier 3. Now to get these, you need to earn every single meta achievement for that tier in all 6 categories. If you have all 6 tier 1 achievements, you qualify for the tier 1 cape. All tier 2 gives you tier 2 comp, and all tier 3 gives you the tier 3 comp cape. Since they are proposing that the stats are tied to owning any one of the tier 1 meta achievements, and since they're proposing that non-stat benefits are associated with the cape slot rather than any one given cape, that means that owning tier 2 or tier 3 comp cape will not give any extra stats or benefits beyond the tier 1 version. Moving on to the grace periods. As you knew, we had a 3-month grace period when Menaphos and 120 Slayer came out that helped people ease their way into the content who had previously had comp and would have lost it if they didn't have the grace period. So they want to continue that kind of thing. This will fix problem 2, inconsistency and incomplete requirements, simply by allowing them to add more requirements without having the fear of the backlash. This means that they'll be able to create a lot more of them, which means you'll need a lot more work to maintain your cape. But they do want to have longer periods of you actually able to wear your cape rather than being in a perpetual state of trying to get it back. So this is the current pitch for the grace periods. They're aiming at a 6-month period of grace where they have very defined lockdown weeks. As you see in the graph here, they'll aim to have, for example, a lockdown week in the beginning of March and then once again in the beginning of September. Any updates between these lockdown periods will not be requirements for comp cape. However, once the lockdown week rolls over, anything that came out and was achievements since the last lockdown week will now be hard requirements for the comp cape. This means if a quest releases second week in March, you won't need to do it until September. However, if an update came out the week before the lockdown period, you need to make sure you've got it done. Moving on, we got freezing the existing comp and trim comp capes. So they don't want to abandon anybody who currently has comp cape or trim or devalue the accomplishments that they have. So their current pitch is to, quote, freeze them. Current comp cape and trim comp cape will become legacy versions of themselves and be renamed appropriately. These versions will keep all their existing requirements. They would still be obtainable and you could still be worn post rework, but they would never have any of their requirements added or changed or removed. They wouldn't have stats or non-stat benefits, but you could still access them thanks to the changes proposed earlier, where those benefits would be added to your character instead. This means that if you already have a comp or trim comp, you get to keep it, and if you're close to getting one, you can still work towards it. Next up, we'll talk about controversial requirements. which is problem 3, what I talked about regards to Reaper and Castle Wars. Reaper assignments will be spread across the combat achievements, and they haven't decided which specific bosses will fall into which tier yet, but they're going to make sure that it's going to be published well in advance, so there shouldn't be any surprises. As far as Castle Wars, it'll either be found on the high tier minigame cape, or will only exist on the legacy trim comp. That's yet to be decided. So that pretty much encompasses the majority of this design document, but I quickly want to go over some frequently asked questions, hopefully to clear up anything you guys may have. First off, why are they reworking comp? Pretty simple. Like I talked about in the very beginning of the video, those 4 problems that I discussed, refer back to it if you forgot. Next up, if you already have comp, what's happening to you? Previously just discussed this, but it'll be converted to a legacy cape. You'll never lose that cape again because no new requirements will ever come out for it, and all the old stats will be converted over to your character rather than the cape itself. So they're adding a whole bunch of new capes into the game. What if you want to wear your old cape? Well, the quest cape, master quest cape, and max cape, as well as their old appearances, will no longer exist in the game. They're effectively being replaced by the lore 1, lore 2, and skills 1 capes. If you've keepsake these capes, you'll be refunded. The old comp and trim comps, like I said, will be legacy versions of themselves. Next up, are the new capes going to be cosmetic overrides, or will you have to keepsake them to see them? Pretty straightforward, they're going to be cosmetic. You don't need to keepsake them. So what will the new capes look like? That is yet to be decided, and the community will vote upon which ones they like best when they come out with some pitch designs. Are the new capes going to be recolorable? The 3 different tiers of the comp cape will be. What achievements are going to be specific categories? That's yet to be finalized, so they'll publish them when they come to it. And what are the guidelines for new achievements? Again, something that's not yet finalized, so we'll have to wait and see. So what about your skill cape perks? Skill cape perks will work just as they do now. For example, you right click your rune crafting cape, you're still going to have that option to tell you your rune Goldberg machine rune. If you have any cape that allows you to have multiple perks on them, it'll function identically as before. And finally, what if a huge update happens to come out a week before lockdown? How I said previously, if an update just came out right before lockdown period, you need to get all those achievements done. They say if it just so happens to be a very large update, then they will look to push the grace period to the next lockout period after that. So instead of having only 1 week to complete it, you'll have 1 week and 6 months. And that is it for the video. Again, the link to the design document is down in the description below. So if you want to read off everything in its entirety, head on down there to do so. With that, I'm going to wrap up the video. If you enjoyed it, hit that like button. If you're not subscribed and you want to stay up to date on all things RuneScape related, then hit that subscribe button. Anyways, I appreciate you watching. I'm out. Peace.